You are kind, you are more than these. Lost for words, trying to describe you. Elohim, Elion, Ale Shelebi. The greatness is all I see. There is nothing you cannot do. There's no mountain you cannot move. If you have said it, then you will do it. You have a track record of keeping your word. To stop doing it now. All over
Okay.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello. One moment.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello.
Hello, ma'am.
Happy Sam.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Good evening.
Good evening.
How are
It's
you?
evening, actually.
It's
Very
evening
well.
now.
Yes, it's evening. No, don't mind me.
It's
It's
evening.
been a long day,
Really?
but we're thankful. Yeah, been a long day. We're just wrapping up the Holy Ghost Congress and all. So
Yeah.
it's been a long week and a long day. But bless God.
Thank God for that. Good to have you here.
Same here, ma'am.
All
Good to be
right.
here.
Okay. I'll just wait for a few more, maybe 1 or 2 minutes
Mommy,
before
no problem.
to join, and then we'll kick off.
You have a track record of keeping your word. You have to stop doing it now. Oh Lord,
Okay, I think we can kick off. I can see a name here. Peacock, thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. This is like an interactive session, really, dealing with childhood trauma. And I'm just going to try and make it as practical as possible, something, that people can relate to. But before we go on, I'd just like to say a few things about our guest tonight. By the way, my name is Olarunke, and I'm the host for this program. I have with me this evening Mr. Samuel Olufemi Adebowale, who's an experienced certified professional faith-based counselor and a recovery therapist with special interest in mental health, trauma, abuse, and addiction recovery. And he has over 7 years in his bag. He's a lead counselor of Excel Space Therapy and the lead therapist of the Papisam Support Group, a member of the counseling team at the Attitude Development Center, Lagos in Nigeria. He's also a member of the African Network of Professional Counselors, and he currently serves as the lead counselor of the Redeemed Christian Church of God Pastor Seed Family in Nigeria. He's had the privilege to speak on several platforms, live and recorded television shows. Some of them have been privileged to watch live, radio shows, social media platform. He's very passionate about mental health of all groups, especially men and everyone that loves them. So, welcome to this program.
Thank
It's
you,
a
man.
privilege having you here. I'm very passionate about mental health. I'm very passionate about holistic health. Yes, I know I do a little bit of jumping up and down there and talking about healthy eating, but health is not complete if we don't look after our mental health. And that's
Very true.
why this aspect is very, very important. And I've learned in my years of work that a lot of people struggle in this area. And sometimes the reason why they struggle lingers is because there are not enough enabling environment where people can be
Yeah.
real with what is going on within them. It's like the
Yeah.
society has an expectation, and even if you go through certain things, there are certain ways that you are expected to behave. And if your behavioral tendencies, falls outside those acceptable standards, then you might find out that you'll be in the minority. So because of that, because of fear of being ostracized, because of fear of being labeled or not being, being the one that is different, a lot of people hide. And because they hide, their suffering lingers for a longer time. And that's what I believe program like this, when people talk about practical things, will help people to see that whatever it is that they have that they clothes is not new. It's not new. Something that somebody has gone through somewhere, might not be exactly the same, or maybe something similar, and they've been able to come at the other end. So it's something that they can face. And one of the things I did throughout the week was to make up stories, feature stories about life issues to bring to fore the reality of what we're
Yeah.
actually talking about today, which is trauma.
Yeah.
So let's start. How will you define trauma? Thank
Well,
you for joining us.
I will define trauma as a response to events and life situations that shatters our safe place or that shatters our programmed way of doing things. So trauma is a response to what shatters our pre-existing lifestyle mode of doing things. Is an event that breaks it. I'll keep it that simple. So, and that's why it is always personal, and that's why you feel it alone, because it's your response to it. And like emotions are our responses to different situations and different things that people do, so that is how I would define trauma.
Okay.
And so I'll let you add that the word trauma is a Greek word that comes from another word, and I can't define that another word now, but that word means wounded.
Okay.
It means wounded. So it is something that shatters or obstructs or spoils the pre-existing lifestyle that we have.
Okay.
Our response to it.
Okay. So in this context now, we are talking about childhood trauma. So what are some of the things that we feel happens to people when they are young that could impact them as they get older?
Okay, so I'll pick it from this angle. You know how that the Bible says that train up a child in the way he should go, so that when he grows, he won't depart. So
Yeah.
the formative years of anybody, that's the childhood years, is the year where a person is formed in character and attitude and stuff. So
Yeah.
whatever happens to that child in that formative years, that alters the child's lifestyle and the child's way of thinking and reasoning, would determine what the child becomes at the end of the day. So childhood trauma can be mild, can be what's that word now? Can be mild, can be acute or chronic. Childhood trauma can be what someone has to live with for life. So examples of childhood traumas might be verbal abuse, might be
Okay.
physical abuse, that the child got wounded on the inside. I know this wound is on the inside, it's inner, so nobody else can feel it but the child, and it doesn't just heal by itself. So the child gets to live with it and grow that way for a long time. So childhood trauma can stem from different things that a child is put through, especially when the child is not allowed to be a child. So recently I was in a seminar where we talked about the horrid child. How that probably a parent has passed or is the first child and they want the child to probably finish school by 15. They already the child of that studies more than play. The child loses the elements of formative years where he has to play, mix with his peers,
Yeah.
and get things wrong and get corrected, and then by the time the child grows up, the child becomes an extremely choleric person, an extremely abusive person, because that was how the person was raised rather. So childhood trauma can stem from different kind of things that comes in the formative year of a child. There's something called adverse childhood trauma.
Yeah.
So probably if a child got sexually abused, molested, or got exposed to substances that are not for his or her age, those are adverse, and those are the ones that need a lot of therapy and help to help the child recover. So imagine a child trafficked for sex at 9, 10, 13, 14. Those are adverse childhood trauma, extreme ones. So I'd like to say this at this point, that trauma sometimes happen due to our environment and how we're raised and things around us, or things that we can't simply control. Trauma happens that way. But the truth is, I like us to understand that it can be managed, people can get healed, but when it is adverse, it has to be spoken about. Now, the challenge is people don't even talk about their traumas up to the stage of getting help. So it's always a challenge, of helping those people recover. And they don't know why they act the way they act until they think back and do a talk therapy and discover, oh, so this was what happened to me as a child that formed me into this. Cultures, traditions, and belief to go out to childhood trauma.
I need to also ask, the fact that people don't talk, sometimes when we look at the way people behave, most of the time we make conclusions about people, based on what we can see. And sometimes people act out from the things that has not been dealt with inside of them.
That's true.
So why is it that people find it difficult to talk, especially within the Christian community?
Okay, so I say that the wiring or the designing of our faith as believers has made us want to carry our cross by ourselves, because by the time you share with someone, it becomes an evening news, everybody knows, and it is also linked to our culture, where people are tagged according to the situations of their lives. They are tagged according to their disabilities or the problems they have or the issues peculiar to them, and of course they are sort of what's that word now? They are sort of segregated that way. So most times people just want to keep to themselves and feel like everybody is fine, and how that we have made people believe that in the Christian faith everything has to be perfect. If everything was perfect, then we won't need a Jesus to come and die. We won't need salvation. We won't need to walk our faith with fear and trembling. So that means that everybody needs to understand that it's not really perfect with anyone, but then we can get better. We can help each other improve, like Paul talked about, how brethren have to fellowship together. Breaking bread together is not just eating. It's about bearing each other's burden and pains and helping each other recover and go through it. Sharing and through each other's pain. And Jesus said that when he said, "Come unto me, all you that are labor and are heavy laden, and I'll give you rest." Rest is a process. So when you're tired, you want to sleep. You don't just rest
Yeah.
at once. You rest gradually. It could take you 2 hours, 3 hours, or some 10 hours to get to the point of real body rest. So, and that's the whole idea. And it's an understanding that I think we need to have. So I have something in my notes that I would like to read, yeah, so that people would have clarity. So
Yeah.
trauma is subjective.
Sorry. I'd just like to say that those that are joining us, if you have comments or you have questions, please, you are free to leave it in the comment section. Okay, so you can continue.
Yes, ma'am. So trauma is subjective and can have a multitude of causes. So the common factor, like I said earlier, for events that lead to trauma is that they are not anticipated. People don't expect them, and they are outside the realms of what we deem to be acceptable. So they
Okay.
are not things that we readily, they are not norm. And then, of course, they can be physically, emotionally, or socially related. So examples of what can cause trauma, number one, is abuse. Like I said earlier, when the child is abused verbally, sometimes some parents say some things to children that brings them a lifetime trauma. See your mates, see how they are behaving, childhood trauma. And then the child grows up to be highly competitive, to be aggressive about it, and can even try to kill anybody that wants to outshine them, because a parent had said in the past, see your mate, see where they are, see where you are. And that
Yeah.
could even
That
lead the
comparison.
child into depression when the child is not doing well. I say my mates are doing well, and from there, suicidal ideation, and the child takes his or her life. And that's one thing I want us to also realize, that trauma can stem from accidents, sudden lifestyle changes, either domestic or auto accident, whichever way it is. So our response to sudden lifestyle changes brings about trauma. So for example, some 4 years ago, I had an accident and then I so and each time I am in a car or a bus, or even if I'm driving, I'll still hold on to that thing on the road. So let's be fine. It's still there.
Just in case.
It took me a while to ask myself, why do I do this? So I remembered how I had the accident. I was sitting in front, the driver I just held that and the accident happened. So today when I enter a car, a bus, anything, I would like to hold on to something just to be sure that I'm safe. So sometimes when people don't pay attention to why they do the things they do, they don't realize that there are traumas that they're living with. It can be mild, it can be chronic. Of course, brain tumor, brain injury, lots of them. Physical injury can lead to it. Like some of us that went to, permit me, a university that we had to study a five-year course for 9 years. You don't easily want to go to school again because you've spent a lot of time studying, a lot of time in school. So going back to school to do masters or PhD is not interesting until you push yourself and you get to a school where everything is fine. It is smooth, not like where you're from. So the trauma starts healing. So I'm getting into how it heals. Sometimes
Before we
a
get there,
okay.
Before we get there, there's a question I want us to address, because I think we have to put everything in context, really, because the fall of man, because everything that happens, like an outplay of maybe things that people experience in their life that are traumatic situations, has its root in something that is common to every man. So the fall of man, was it a traumatic event?
Actually, it was a traumatic event because the Bible recorded that Adam and Eve felt bad. They were chased out of the garden. They had to start life all over again. They had to start living life the way they were not used to. So this is how it is. Initially, let's assume you have someone paying your bills, giving you all that you need. So all you just need is just to maintain, put it in order. You don't have to even work hard. But now things change. Probably you did something wrong and then you were sacked, or things change. You now have to really work to earn your own living, do extra labor and all. It is. Now trauma comes with pain. Remember that God told Eve that now she would have to bear a seed in pain, she would feel the pain and some sort. So it happened that way. Initially, that was not the plan. Everything was meant to be easy, smooth. So it's actually a level of trauma that they felt, and Well, I'd say that type of um, trauma appears as a punishment or as as the consequences of an action. So sometimes the consequences of your action can actually lead you to a place of trauma. For example, I had a friend way back in high school, and then she got pregnant, and because she got pregnant, she contacted HIV/AIDS and all of that. So one of those days, we were going to reach out to people living with HIV/AIDS to help them, reach out to them. And I saw my high school seatmate there, and then she shared her story. She was weeping, and life as she knew it had gone. It had changed for her. She at some point she was saying, "I'm just here waiting to die." Life was not what it used to be. So, and that is the consequence of her action. She was not raped. She was partying, doing big, having a lot of friends, and she got pregnant in the process. So trauma can stem from that. That thing they will say in high school, write an essay on had I known. Had I known. So it's part of it. So had I known is a response to the consequence of someone's action, and it's trauma in itself.
Okay.
Because having flashbacks and thinking back,
so it can also be self-generated. So it can be self-generated. It's not just what somebody else is doing to you all the time, or maybe what somebody else does. It can also be self-generated, just like the case of Eve in the Garden of Eden. Okay, so let's now talk about the focus for today: self-awareness. How can people become aware that they have issues in their life that they need to deal with, and is rooted in, traumatic events that their past? Self-awareness. How can people come to that place of self-awareness?
Number one is paying attention to yourself. So a lot of the time to just live life by the day, just go, come. We don't pay attention to why we do things that we do. And it stems from when you understand self-love, that you have to take care of yourself. You have to make time to rest. You have to notice your body changes, your reactions to issues. So when you realize that you are becoming short-fused and acting up, you should ask yourself, why am I acting this way? Is this who I am? So it is like learning to have this feedback process you do for yourselves. So knowing who you are and what you are. Number two is when your environment changes from what it used to be. So you should know that you will not live life or accept things the way they used to be. For example, COVID happens and things changed. Things changed, and because things change in our world, our environment, it began to tell on people, and that was very obvious. It was so loud that people could sense it. Sometimes things happen and people just move on and they don't just want to mind it. But then it's paying attention to yourself. It's very important. And then of course, understanding I think I'll say that this thing boils to emotional intelligence. How you self-awareness, people awareness, environment awareness, and also your response to issues of life, different things, tells a lot. So sometimes you just realize that you just go up the handle and raise your voice, and you're wondering, why did I do that? So for me, one of the things I tell people to do in therapy is to have that self-check. Last thing before you go to bed at night, just speak to yourself. So what did I do today? What did I do? What should I improve on? Then you will know, oh, this is okay. This is why I reacted this way. Is it okay? Should I work on it? Should I do an apology to whoever they have been hurt with how I've reacted? It's good to always be self-aware and know how you react and how your body feels per time. So of course, the average Lagosian, for example, is always on the edge, shout, hey, yeah, and I'm always hoping that they could get home and ask themselves, why do I have to raise my voice? Why do I have to shout? Why do I have to make a scene all the time? Once you're able to get into yourself that way, you're able to answer those questions, and you'll be able to figure out if you have residue of traumas that you need to deal with or get help with, and it goes on and on like that.
So I want to ask, talking about linking with the Christian faith now, what role does the Holy Spirit play in creating self-awareness about dealing with
The Bible says that He is the comforter. He will guide us into all truth, saying this is the way go in it. He said you would hear a voice behind us saying this is the way go in it. So the Holy Spirit is there to get our attention to those seemingly silent things that we don't pay attention to. Maybe the days you've gotten angry, He will come and tell you quietly, you know you were wrong with that thing that you did. And you know you were wrong. And then you need to apologize or make it right and move on. So the Holy Spirit is there to help us pay attention, remind us. It's like Google Calendar. It's like Siri. I would help you, do the things you need to do so you don't forget them. And it helps you control your emotions actually. So wherever you're supposed to be angry, it makes me that this is anger, it's coming up, you can deal with it. So for some people, when they get angry, what works for them is to walk away of that, is to walk out of that environment. Some people, when they're angry, it's for them to go and get something to do physically that will help them burn energy. For some people, it's time to go to the gym when they get angry. So they burn and vent those energy on the rims and bars and boxing bags and stuff. So it depends on how you choose to control it. But there is a place of being deliberate about it. At the bottom of all of this conversation, there's a place of being deliberate about yourself and being mindful of yourself. And that is where I feel that a lot of people are falling short.
Can you explain further? Let me just go back to sorry, for people that have just joined us or are watching us, if you have any comment or you have any questions, kindly put it in the comment box. Duro Wojola, thank you for joining us. I think 3 or 4 things that you have said now about to become self-aware, because I think self-awareness really is the key. If you don't know that you have an issue, even if people are telling you, you will not listen. So I think self-awareness is key. The first thing you said, pay attention to yourself. The second, be observant when your environment changes.
Exactly.
Third one is, I think, emotional intelligence, if I'm right.
Yes.
And then the
being
fourth
able
one,
to manage your emotions and your response to what people around you do. Majorly being able to manage your response to life issues.
Okay,
And responding well.
manage your response to life issues. And then the fourth one, being deliberate, which is the one you're about to expatiate on. So over to you about being deliberate.
Being deliberate is loving yourself, self-care, and treating yourself well. Number one, self-management. When you know that you're tired, I need to rest. So you take a pause, you rest, you come back to it. You may not have finished the task, but at that point in time, you may need to rest and go back to it. So I tell people that when you need to rest and then go back to work again. So it's not until don't wait till you're done with it. Some people say, until I finish this work, I can't rest. You may not leave a minute more to see the end of that task. Because when you overuse yourself, you just shut down. So I've heard, I know people that due to the high level of stress and they feel I have tasks, things to do, till I get them done, I can't rest. And indeed, they rest finally. So because you overuse the body, it exceeds its capacity and the body shuts down. So the body is like a system that needs to be rejuvenated at some intervals. So when you walk for a little while, you sleep, you rest, it will naturally heal itself. If it's not overused, it would heal itself. You come back to your refresh, you're good to go, you eat well, and then you move on. So one other thing I would like to say about being deliberate is eating right. Not just because you want to eat full. Eat the kinds of meals that your body require. So, for example, you're really hungry. It doesn't mean that you finish big bowls of rice or whatever. You eat what your body needs. Lots of protein to repair worn out tissues. carbohydrates at the right quantity to give you the energy, and then you can sleep. But sometimes you eat so much and can't even sleep either. So being deliberate is being mindful of what you eat, what you wear, where you go to, so and then how you keep yourself. So because we are in this climate doesn't mean that we can't eat well and we can't live long like people do. But it's only in Nigeria that I've seen that people eat fruits when they are in season. We're meant to eat fruit at least 3 or 4 times a week. So do not say because fruit is not in season, because I can't afford it. Just there. Try to get the quantity of fruit that your body needs. Your body might not need more than one apple a day. And one apple at most 100 naira, and that's enough. But we want to buy apple in large quantity and eat like 5 or 10 apples. It's a waste to your body.
Okay. Yeah,
Exactly.
I'd
So
like
that's
you to.
it.
Yeah, I'd like you to explain further. Let's go back now. Earlier, you said that sometimes there are behavioral patterns that have been
Yeah.
formed over the years because,
Yes.
like, if you look back to the case of Adam and Eve, when they discovered that they made a mistake, the first thing they did was that they eat themselves. They discovered that they were naked, and the first thing to do was let's just hide our nakedness. And I think that is what tends to happen. Where you said earlier that trauma, another way we can define trauma is through the word wound, when you are wounded. And of course, when somebody is carrying wound, the first thing you want to do is you want to cover it because you don't want anybody to touch it. So what are some of the things, like I'll call it clothing, general one, generic way now, that people use to cover, past traumatic events? General things that people use as a way of covering.
Okay. One of the general things that people say is, well, it depends on the kind of trauma we're talking about. For example, when you lose a loved one, yes, some people say it is well with you'll be fine. Or some people say, well, me too, I've lost a loved one before, and I'm fine. And you move on through it. Those things are they're really not what people should say at that time. So it depends on the trauma and the things that people do. But generally in this climate, people want to say, I'll get by, I'll be fine, and then they cover it up, they don't talk about it. They're afraid of other people getting into their business and all of that. There's also the place of people trying to, what's that word now? I'm trying to be careful, but it's a bit spiritual, trying to spiritualize things that they should talk about and get help. For example, when when someone has said something not nice to you, you hear forgive and forget and move on. Don't worry, it is godly to forgive and forget. And then for me, I'll tell you that forgiveness is a journey. Yes, you can decide to pardon the person, but then you need to also get to the point of constantly forgiving that person. So that's the point. I would also say that first things that people should do when they go through trauma is to talk about it. Covering your pains or your wound will make will get the wound septic, get it bad, and it will be very terrible. So if I'm trying to really relate this with the everyday people. What people do, say, okay, what's that word now? One of the reasons I'm taking my time on this question is every trauma has their responses and has the way people manage them. And trauma can be caused by different things. So, for example, when someone has an accident and they don't want to talk about it, maybe with the fear of, if I talk about it, a lot of people get into my business, it gets worse, let me just quietly manage it, and it gets worse and they don't get the help that they need to get.
Or could it be that maybe because there are some traumatic events, you might feel shamed, like talking publicly about maybe you're raped or something bad happened, like Maybe the labeling,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah,
somebody wants
the
to be
labeling should be there.
stigmatized.
Yes, the labeling, the yeah, the labeling will be there. Yes, and then how that in our environment we don't accept people that go through trauma as well. That's when they get sacked at work, or they lose friends, and they just ostracize them, or they leave them alone to themselves. Yeah. Now, I remember I read a book at that time on fighting shame for people that have gone through trauma. We need to first have clarity that whatever you have gone through is not peculiar to you alone. Someone out there has gone through it. So first things first is to know that, like the Bible says in First Corinthians 10, that whatever it is that you go through, such as is common to man. So
Yeah,
somebody
yeah.
else has gone through it. You can heal, you can get over it, and you can move on. So the shame of I went through it, why should I? Why me? Should not be an issue at that time. Maybe at that time it should now be, how do I move on from here? What do I do next? And seek help from the right people. So the mistakes that people make is they go out to get help from the wrong people that will shame them more and make you look like, and then that would actually even make it an evening news, and everyone knows you have been raped or you have been abused some type of way. And then culture too also contributes to it. So how that a man gets raped and he wants to talk about it, and then they go, how can a man be saying that he has been raped? That is not done. You're a
Yeah, it's
man, you have
like
to move on and
you have to be
handle, and then
strong.
he lives with the trauma, he gets married, he starts having sexual issues with the wife, he just cannot stand it. And this is one of the things that I think we need to also know, that whatever you have gone through, speak to a professional counselor, seek help, and know that it's not peculiar to you,
Yeah.
and get embrace it, embrace the reality,
Yeah.
because there's also a piece of people living in denial. Embrace the reality. This has happened. How do I move on from here? And understand that
And I,
there's a purpose for
yeah.
that pain.
Yeah, and I think one thing I've learned, I think in my own personal journey, is that you need the support of people that you can be bare to, if you understand what I mean.
That they
People
can be
that
vulnerable with, that can
with
accept you the way you are
with no
without
hold back,
judgment.
no
Yeah.
judgment, and they don't come into your life with a predetermined script for your recovery.
Yes.
They
No.
want you to own your recovery
Yeah.
journey. So even if
Exactly.
you feel that you should be running and you are still crawling, they will allow you to do that crawling at a pace that you can manage, because at the end of the day it is your own journey, you have to own it.
Johnny, exactly.
So I think one of the things, apart from what the things you have mentioned, is that for people coming out of, or maybe you are beginning to deal with it, you need, even if it's just one or two people, that you can be 100%. I am not okay. I am not okay. And
Okay.
and you can really, really talk from your, from your heart.
Yeah.
You know,
So I'll put that as having someone that you're accountable to. But then
exactly.
in my work as a therapist, I found that some people do not really have someone they're accountable to. And they don't have the energy to start building that relationship. So that is where I would say that, be your own friend. Be
Mm.
your own friend. Talk to yourself.
So
A,
what
a,
practical things can they now
a,
do if
yeah.
they don't for example now, one of the things I do that helps me, I do journaling a lot. I write a lot. If I write a lot, and I realize that writing actually helps you to process your thoughts, you're able to analyze things. So what other things can, practical things that people can do when they have boiling emotional issues, that
Yeah.
is eating them up, and they want to deal with it, but they are really limited with resources and they don't know what they can do to, how they can go about it.
How you can deal with it. So, one of the things you do is what you have said. So you have to document it. Documentation of those things, either orally, either written, so that by the time you start talking about it to yourself, that's a form of relief. So I ask people in therapy to do a recording, of what they've gone through. I ask that they go online and post their and find out people that have gone through what they've gone through. Read stories online. Reading stories that somebody somewhere in Romania has gone through what you're passing through. Somebody somewhere in India has been there. Somebody somewhere in Ibadan has been there. Will give you that boost to keep living life, knowing that you are not alone in it, and it will help. And of course, join a support group. So a support group a support group is a group of people with peculiar issues that are finding help. So what happens is you are able to hold yourselves along and okay, so I'm not alone, we're in this together, and it goes like that. For all you know, what some people need to heal is also have a support group. And I've known people that they prefer to have support groups than speak to someone or be accountable to someone and say, okay, this is what I go through all the time. And of course, there are support groups now in Nigeria. I have a support group as well. And then it's easier that way when you just speak and find people of like minds as regards to the issues that you go through. That helps as well. So I remember speaking to someone recently, and I gave him an option and said he would rather do a voice recording of himself, and he kept doing that till he felt that can he do a podcast, and he started a podcast that way, and that has given him a boost to life. Okay. So that's why I say that whatever we recommend in therapy depends on the peculiarity of the trauma and what the person is going through. But then you can get help yourself as well. You can get help yourself, and the thing is, most of the time, help won't come to you. That's the truth. You have to go get help.
Yeah.
So we'll say help is here. Come and get help. But most of the time, you have to go out and get the help by yourself. So go help shopping, and you find help.
Okay. So how do we now marry our faith with that recovery process? You said at the beginning, it's not it's a process, and sometimes for some people, depending on where they are coming from or what they have to deal with, it might take them longer than other people. At what point, because sometimes when you have issues in a particular area and you keep going back and forth, even if you have people that you're accountable to, or people that you deliberately open your heart to, it can become a bit tiring if you're supposed to be running and you're still crawling. So how do we marry this journey of recovery, our faith?
So I'll start from Genesis. God made the whole earth in 6 days. God is a God of process, a step after the other. And when they asked Jesus about forgiveness, he said, forgive 70 times, 7 times. Just keep doing it. 70 times, 7, 70 times, 7 times, just keep. So Jesus himself realized that forgiveness will take a while for humans. So keep forgiving your brother 70 times, 7 times. Each time he hurt you, you forgive. It's a long journey. And most of the time I tell people that our faith, or there's no life that we live that is outside our faith. But it's just that we haven't seen it or perceived it, that, oh, this is how it is. So when people come into therapy and we link the process to the scriptures, they go, oh, really? I didn't see that. Now, the thing is, forgiveness is a journey. Recovery is a long process. But then you have to be deliberate about your own recovery. So like I tell people at the beginning of any conversation, that the result of therapy is directly proportional to the efforts that you bring in. So therapy is not magic. It is hard work. But the result you get is what you put into it. So if you don't put something good in it, you won't get something good out of it. So our job most of the time is to guide you encourage you, coach you, stay with you till you get to the finish line, help you not give up, and help you achieve the purpose with which you set out at the beginning. You know, when we set goals at the beginning and all. Now, the truth is, recovery is dependent on the client. It's dependent on you, how you recover. You know, it's dependent on you and how you embrace it. I'd say that for a fact, not everybody that comes into therapy with me gets the result that they want. But then I make them realize that it is based on them, what they want to achieve. And then I've had someone that has left 4 years ago thinking that therapy didn't work, and he came back early in the year and he started again and has achieved a lot of results. So sometimes I ask people to make their decision and be ready. Being ready is setting your heart and your mind into it. Being mentally ready to go through your process of healing. Some people are resentful in their spirit or in their mind, so they don't even want to get healing. So they are just there. They know I need healing, but they are not willing to go there. And most of the time, when you don't want to get healing, you damage yourself, not the person that has hurt you. And that is how unforgiveness is. You know, you damage yourself more. The person will move on, live their life, and be good, and you keep carrying the pains and the burdens around. And that's why I say that at the beginning of you recovering, you have to decide that I want to recover, and I'll do all that it takes to recover, and we'll achieve the results of recovery. It's not magic, it's not rocket science, it's a process. You know, in my notes here, I have that, let me see. There are many different treatment options for those going through psychological trauma. The key is finding a treatment that works best for each person. So that's why I said it's peculiar. And of course, treatments generally involve acknowledging and processing trauma-related memories while releasing any pent-up fight or energy. Now, acknowledging is key to me. Acknowledging that, oh, I've been traumatized. I need help. I will go through it. Sometimes some people feel that they are ready to go through, but they are really not ready in their mind. Of course, it also involves deciding and being ready to get the help that you need. So most times we ask people to go and decide, go and think it over. Are you ready to go through it? Once you're ready to go through it,
because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, and it's a lot of emotional release for whoever wants to get healed.
Yeah.
You know, and for me, it is a lot. I'd say that it is really, 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 really a lot of plenty work. So I want to read something to us here. Number one is be trauma informed. Be deliberate to understand and recognize that there's trauma. Be trauma informed. Be deliberate. It really happens. Now, adopt an approach. Decide that how do you want to get healed? What do you want to do? What is wrong with you? What happened to you? If you can pick out all of that, we'll go. Then, of course, adopt and practice trauma-specific interventions. You know, and then the other thing now is engage yourself. Engage yourself. You know, speak to yourself. That thing we do that we say confession.
Yeah.
of the scriptures. So you tell yourself, I'll go through this process, I'll recover, I'll pull through, I will be healed. The more you say it to yourself, the more your mind picks it. Your subconscious mind speaks it, processes it, and opens up to it. So you can actually speak, or I'll say the best person to help you recover
is yourself. I think so, really.
Exactly.
I think, excuse me. I think at the end of the day, really, we can say so many things about, impact of childhood trauma on adult behavior, or why people behave the way they behave, unless people come to the point where they become self-aware and then they want to change. They want to, you must be willing to change. Yeah, you must be willing. If you have made up your mind that, okay, no matter what happened to me, I choose not to live a life of unforgiveness, then you have to be willing to go through it, that even no matter how difficult, so it's a personal
And it's a link to our faith. So you have to be willing to forgive and let go. So most of the time when people are not willing to go through the process, it's because they're not willing to forgive. They're not ready to move on. That's what happens most of the time.
but you
When
can't,
people
um I think one of the things I've learned over the years, I think one of the things I've realized, maybe you can speak more on that, linking our faith to our journey of recovery. Because at the end of the day, I would say everybody is damaged one way or the other by the nature of
exactly
everybody is damaged. So
in
we are
different
all,
degrees.
it's just the degrees that differs. And some
Yes.
people, their level of damage now, become more compounded because of
Yeah.
other adverse life
Yeah.
circumstances. So, so everybody is going through like a journey of recovery, and
Yeah.
you might be strong in one area and be weak in another area. So bringing
Yeah.
it back to what we're
About
talking
that. Mhm.
about, forgiveness, because trauma most time does not happen in isolation.
No, 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 no.
Happen in
It
isolation,
doesn't.
it always involve other party, and there are no
Yeah.
guarantees that the other party might even be remorseful. You might feel that
No.
somebody has done something wrong and you confront them and they are not sorry for what they have done. They are not remorseful. So how do we now marry our faith to that point where you are going through the journey of recovery, not dependent on other people's response? I
Yeah.
hope
So we
you
always need to realize. We always need to realize that what we call that the journey of recovery is not because you were hurt. It's not because things like that happened to you. It's not okay. Let me say this way: the journey of recovery is not dependent on the other person. Is you fighting for your inner peace and freedom and living life to the full. Because at the end of the day, we live life. Let me use the word per head per head.
what does
I
that
can't
mean?
live your life per head per head. I can't live your life. You can't live my life. We live our life on individual basis. So I need to realize that when anything wrong happens to you, you need to do all that you have to do to bring balance back to yourself, and
Mhm.
move on. So sometimes it's not about the person that has refused to acknowledge that they've done something wrong or to apologize. No, it's about you enjoying your life. And when we can enjoy your life is to appreciate all this self-care, heal when you have to heal, move on when you have to move on. Don't let trauma linger. As soon as you're hurt, you realize this is wrong, then go get help instantly. Because the longer trauma lingers in your heart or in your mind, the worse it becomes. It's like an injury that is untreated. It gets bad, it gets bigger, and the skin decays more, and all of that. It has to be treated on time. So you won't say because the okay, let me say this way. For example, someone pushed you, you fell down, and
Mhm.
you had a bad bruise. So you won't say because the person did not say sorry, you won't treat
Sorry.
your wound,
Mm.
or you won't go to the hospital. Or let me say it in this very funny way. You won't say it because you had malaria because mosquito bite you, and the mosquito refused to say sorry. So you not treat the malaria until that mosquito comes to say sorry. I not treat this malaria. You are the one that will die. The mosquito will move and bite other people. That is it. So you can't say because somebody has hurt you, you will refuse to heal and move on. You'll be damaging yourself the more. So either the person says sorry, or the person doesn't say sorry. You have to heal, you have to move on, and you have to just like the story of the mosquito. That's the truth. So because mosquito will bite you, and you have malaria, see, it's the fault of the mosquito. If you not bite me, I'll not have malaria. Let the mosquito come and say sorry first before I go and treat myself. Then you wait forever, and that's the
Oh,
truth. So
okay.
let the mosquito go and live your life.
And live your life. Okay. So, four things you've said about things we can do to walk in victory over overcoming trauma. Really, that's what
Yes.
this series is all about. And I'd just like
Yes.
to quickly go over it again. The first one is to pay attention to yourself,
Yes.
where you talked about self-love and then the second one, to be observant of your environment when things
Yes.
change, and see how you react and why you react the way you react. It's like being your own watchman, really, if I can put it like that. And then the
Exactly.
third one is your emotional reaction. See how your emotional, am I right? Emotional reaction, emotional intelligence,
Yes. Your emotional
response to circumstances. And then
Yes.
I think the fourth one is being deliberate, which is, I think we spent a long time about talking about accepting responsibility, really, for your own personal health. I think that's
Exactly.
just the crux of it, really, that at the end of the day, you are responsible.
Exactly.
It's not what somebody has done to me that matters. It's what you now
Mhm.
choose to do with what has happened.
Exactly.
That is really, really the most
Exactly.
important thing.
It's major. Funny enough, yeah. By the time you heal and you move on, you're unconsciously telling that person to go get help. Because whoever has hurt you to needs help. Like abuse is a vicious cycle. So when somebody
Mm.
hurts you, that means somebody has been hurt to and the person has refused to get help. So when you get help, you're consciously telling that person, or unconsciously rather, telling that person to go get help. It's that simple.
All right.
So be the
Okay.
first person to break the cycle, get help, then others too can get help.
All right. Okay. All right. I think that's just. I don't know whether you have any other addition. Your final one.
Okay, yeah. We always say that a damaged adult is as a result of a broken childhood. But then I've learned over time to say that whatever you become as an adult is your responsibility.
Yeah.
You might not have say over your childhood. You might not have control over your childhood, but you have control over the adults that you are, so
Yeah.
that you are so that you are an abused child or a damaged child doesn't mean that you grow up into a broken adult. Let me say the other way, that you're a broken child doesn't mean you should grow into a damaged adult. No, it
Yeah.
doesn't say that. So you have a say over your life, what you become and where you get to. And there are tons of stories out there that would inspire that. Read about Jess Meyer, read about Oprah Winfrey, read about even Pastor Adeboye himself that didn't get to wear shoes till he was a late teenager. Quite a number of things. So it is your responsibility to get help, heal, and move on. Don't let it not be that you are now tied and locked down in the past and you never moved on from the past.
Mm-hmm.
It is good to always move on from the past, always get help. There's no point falling down and remaining on the floor. You rise up, dust your body, clean up. The process of therapy.
Yeah.
Rising up, dusting your body, and moving on.
You know.
Facing forward all the time. It is very important to face forward.
I
The
think
more
there's
you
even a
look
book
back,
like that. I think John Maxwell, if I'm right,
yeah,
Facing
yes,
Forward. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Is it
The more
failing
you look
forward?
back, the more difficult it will be to move forward. I can't want to go forward and keep looking back. I would never move forward. Just like when you're driving,
Yeah.
you have to drive forward. As well, look at the back to be sure that nothing bad happens. But your face is in front. You're not driving and then you are looking at the back. It doesn't work that way. So I
Okay.
think we need to, as Christians, as believers, and everyone out there, I think we need to learn to move on and dust ourselves. It can be really painful. It can be traumatic. It can really hurt you. But you are left with the responsibility of moving on. So I say to people, it is either you move on or you move on. It is either you heal or you heal. There's no other way to it. It is either you dust yourself, pick yourself up and move on, or you dust yourself, pick yourself up, and you move on. Same thing. So you have
Yeah.
to make that decision. And then from there, life begins to get easier, better. You're able to manage people more, and you move on. Then let's stop developing thick skin or coping mechanism. Because at the end of the day, the coping mechanism would break down and you still come back to the reality. So I've seen a lot of adults living with coping mechanisms, and it really damages the beautiful persona that they could own as adults. Don't try to cope. Try to face it. Face your fears. Fight the shame
When you said
and
don't
win.
try to cope, because you just brought another word that you didn't explain before, can you just try and explain a little bit, maybe with examples that people can relate with?
Okay.
Just before
Okay,
we
I'll tell
round
you
up,
that.
for those that have just joined us, if you have any comments or any questions, please, you are free to put it in the comment box. When you say coping mechanism, can you
Yeah,
please?
coping mechanisms often are cover-ups for our pains and the things we go through, things that help us get by. So for example, people try to use substances or drugs to cope, to move on. They feel if I don't take this amount of substance, I can't have, like for example, people that struggle with self-esteem. So they feel they have to take certain substances to be able to face the crowd and be bold and cope. That's one. Then of course, coping mechanism are in various forms and ways, but they are majorly things to use to cover up to achieve a particular emotional excellence. So you want to achieve certain things. For example, have a friend that for her to be able to achieve the kind of work she does, she needs to take coffee all the time. And at the end of the day, she had excess caffeine in her system. It affected how she thinks and how she lives. And then she literally could not do anything without caffeine anymore. She got addicted to it. So in trying to cope, she got an addiction. So don't try to cope. Try to deal with it. Work. When you're tired, rest. After you have rested, go back to work. But I'll say start out early. Whatever it is you want to do, start out early so that you don't get pressed for time and need things to cope with. So that's why I said don't cope, but face it, and live it well. There are times that we face pressures from work, from relatives and stuff. Don't allow yourself be pressured. Face the reality of it. Tell people, I can only work at this space, achieve this at this time, and move on. Sometimes working under pressure is damaging to the mental health. So they would ask you when you apply for jobs, can you work under
Pressure.
pressure? Can
Most
you
times you
cope?
say yes.
People say yes because they need the job and need the money.
Yeah,
And then at
yeah,
the end of the time you can't cope with the demands of the job and
yeah,
you leave. So for me, I
yeah.
think the best answer to that is if the demands of the job is easy, then I think I'll be able to handle it. Don't always answer with I can work under pressure. If they ask you can you work under pressure, then your reply should be that if the um, demand of the job is fair enough, then I should be able to handle it. Or you say it's dependent on the demand of the job. If they say can you cope working under pressure, it's dependent on the demand of
Good
the
job.
job. If I can cope with it, I do. If I don't, I bail out. So they know that you're not just saying, you're not promising what you can't give. And even if you are trying to give it, you're not overstretching yourself, and losing in some other areas of your life. So, because I have a young friend too that he works a lot under pressure. So he became cranky and short-fused and does things haphazardly. It was a little late before he realized, but then he had become somebody with that
Persona.
emotional imbalance
Mm.
persona, and it's very terrible. So, and that's what happens when you want to cope. You cope and you develop an addiction. When you try to cope and say, okay, I'll cope, I'll develop a coping mechanism to it. It's a lot dangerous than facing the reality. Fight it, face the shame. This is who I am. This is what I happened to me. This is what I'm going through, and then give people reason to heal and move on, and then you're fine.
All right.
Because by the time you dare to share your story and talk about it, people will actually celebrate your bravery and your courage for sharing your pain and say, this is what I had to go through, but today I'm here. You imagine Joyce Meyer saying that she was her dad slept with her for a couple of times and stuff, blah, 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 and see where she is today. Everybody would have a story from the past, terrible things, but don't let that be your reality. So I remember someone said to me at the time and said, Sam, you know how that stories end with happily ever after? It's sad at the beginning, but then it's happily ever after at the end. So that you're going through hard time doesn't say that it will remain that way. But let your happily ever after happen. You know, that person said that to me, and everything changed for me. And I'm actually in an interview with the person right now. She might not remember, but she said
Oh,
it.
really?
Yeah.
I can't remember. You really?
And that changed everything. So
Wow.
let it be that your story ends happily ever after. You'll have sad times and sad moments and traumas you have to go through. But let us work and fight for the happily ever
Ever
after.
after. Yeah. Thank you very, very much. Thank you so much, our viewers, for joining us. The purpose, I said at the beginning, I'm passionate about health, but I'm passionate about holistic health,
No.
spirit, soul, and body. You know, each part working in congruence with each other, and that helps us to live our life to the full. And so, whatever it is that you are dealing with, and one of the things I realized is that because internal wounds are not feasible, they are not, they are not, you cannot see them with the naked eye. Sometimes we hide, and because just as our guest has said, if we are not facing it, we just allow the wound to become septic. But it is possible. It is possible to be healed. It is possible to go through whatever it is that you are going through and come out, just as he has said, happily ever, happily after, on the other side. It's a process, it's a journey. Be patient with yourself. If you do it, you rise and fall, you rise and fall. Don't stop, just keep moving. If you need to reach
Okay.
out, to seek help, reach out and seek help. There is nothing new under the sun. And no matter it is that you are facing, I think the most important thing that's one of the things that has kept me going over the years, being sure that God's love never, never failed. I remember there was one day God said to me, I just heard it and I smiled that day. No matter what happened, I can never abandon you, and that gave me such internal strength, that it doesn't matter. Even if the whole world gang up together and abandons me, I have my heavenly Father that can never abandon me. So no matter what you are going through, I'm sharing the same thing with you, the love of Christ. The love of
Yeah.
Christ is unending. God's love is unconditional. He wants us to be well. God wants us to be well, spirit, soul, and body. So regardless of the depth of your wound, allow him into your heart, and I can guarantee you, I've experienced it in my life. I've experienced the healing power of God that works it through the inner man. So if you open your heart to him, regardless of the depth of the pain and of the hurt, healing is available. So thank you so much for joining us.
It's a
Um,
pleasure being here.
yeah, thank you so much. We'll be back another time still talking about recovery from trauma and things that we can put in place to help us to live well and enjoy the life that God has ordained for us. So thank you so much, Frias, for joining us. And thank you so much, Mr. Sam. Papi Sam.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's a
Thank you
pleasure
so
to be here.
much. Thank you. All right. So bye for now.
Bye. Thank you very
Bye.
much. Wow.
Okay.
Yep, yep.
All right. Okay.